Fox Valley in Focus. I'm Barb Nadeau, and on today's show we're going to talk about emergency preparedness. We have two guests. Our first guest will be Tom Sikora. He's the Director of Emergency Management for the City of Sandwich. And following him, we're going to meet Joe Dillett. He's a Disaster Action Team member for the American Red Cross. We'll get started in just a minute.
Their support changed my life.
They were like family.
My voice is now heard.
A home for every animal.
My future is bright because they cared.
This is our home now.
Thank you to the 1,200 nonprofits that serve Cass and Clay counties every day.
Our first guest is Tom Sikora. Tom, you have been Director of the Emergency Management Agency for the City of Sandwich for over 12 years?
Since 2002.
Well, thank you for being here. And before that, you had a long history in emergency management.
28 years in Calumet City.
Wow. So what is life like for you day to day? What does the Emergency Management Agency Director do on a sunny day?
Not much, thankfully. But I still have a day job. But you use that slack time to do things like your disaster plan, make sure everything is operational, and just try to keep on a level plane for when things do go sideways.
And I know you manage a lot of communication, like a Facebook page, and you're constantly responding to members of the community with their questions as well.
Well, we like to have a dialogue like that. It's kind of rare where people can have that conversation. It's not so much to get an answer, but then to get it amplified. It's kind of nice.
Don't you think, though, that people don't worry about disasters on a day-to-day basis, but it's always after the fact? We're reacting. We're not acting in advance.
And that's kind of unfortunate. As I've always said to folks when I speak in front of groups, is it takes something like a Plainfield or a Coal City or Washington to wake people up. And then for, maybe 6 months you've got some interest and it'll fade back. Like last year was not a very big year for storms, which is going to make people complacent. And it's going to make it hard to believe that this can actually happen. But we've only got a couple more weeks till the formal season begins as far as the calendar is concerned.
Right. Emergency Preparedness Week is in the beginning of March.
Severe Weather Awareness Week is the first full week of March in the state of Illinois.
But that doesn't mean anything because we've seen storms come up all through the spring, summer, and then into November.
That's one of my mantras, any time of the day or night when the conditions are right.
Okay, and you just mentioned something that really intrigues me. You said you speak before groups. I didn't know that. So if someone wants to contact you and find out about emergency preparedness, you would actually go out. Who do you speak to?
I will go wherever I'm invited.
Okay. Who are some of the recent people that have asked you to speak? Is it like the Rotary or is it a school group?
Yes, all of the above. It really doesn't matter.
Now, what do you tell them when you go to do a presentation?
We usually go with I'll go with the overview of what we are, what we do, and then how it affects them, what they can do for themselves. And really that's what our agency does best. We enable people to be resilient against these things.
Before the show, we were talking a little bit about how when something happens, we really don't know what to do. We think we do, but it's good to practice.
Yeah,
be prepared.
exactly.
That's something we have to kind of learn, isn't it?
There was a fellow that was the severe weather warning coordination meteorologist at the Weather Service, and he would come before groups and he would start with a quotation to the effect of, oftentimes the cause of disaster is a lack of familiarity with a life-threatening situation. And that's where we're at. If you don't realize that it's a threat, you'll never pick up on it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You know, I remember taking a first aid class a long time ago, and they said the first thing you do is stop because we want to rush. And they said, take stock of the situation. So what are some of the things that people need to look for?
Well, first of all is awareness. Accept the fact that it's a statistical probability that a storm will occur in our area. Simple as that. It's all numbers, not if, when. Be prepared. I preach constantly about NOAA All Hazards Radio. Have that alerting weather radio set up properly in a location where it'll work.
Okay, a lot of people don't like a weather radio because they make noise.
They don't do that anymore unless you ask them to. The new ones are not only programmable, but easily programmable. Even when the same codes first came out that they used to isolate the warnings, you used to have to look up the code and punch it in. Now you just look up your county in the display. Hit the button, you're in.
And it won't bother you unless there's something you need to know.
That's correct. You may want to go in the menu and turn off the Amber Alerts because those have a tendency to go off at 3 in the morning, but it will only go off when it's pertaining to you.
So if you get one of these weather radios, you can actually make it do what you want it to do and nothing else.
That's correct.
Okay, that's really interesting. Now, what do you think? And I hadn't thought about asking you about this before, but what do you think about the difference between a weather radio and an app on my phone, and which is going to be more reliable in the long run?
The cell towers die first.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of those don't have backup power.
So you're saying that a weather radio still is?
Yes, that
a
is
good
your
thing.
first best defense.
This is really interesting. I love talking to you, and I'm so glad we have more time to talk, because some of the things I want to ask you about is shelter advice, how to create a packing up and having the preparations ready in case something goes wrong. And I'm so glad we have more time to talk. Let's take a break, and we'll come back with more right after this.
Their support changed my life.
They were like family.
My voice is now heard.
A home for every animal.
My future is bright because they cared.
This is our home now.
Thank you to the 1,200 nonprofits that serve Cass and Clay counties every day.
We're talking with Tom Sikora. He's the Director of Emergency Management for the City of Sandwich. And Tom is one of these people who's very approachable. When you see him out in town, stop and ask him a question, because he's always got lots of information to share. And we were just talking about the things people need to be aware of when it comes to emergency weather situations. And just to know they're coming, just to be prepared for them coming. But once they're here, there's a lot of different scenarios we could find ourselves in. We could be in a car, we could be in our home, we may have to leave home.
Right. Well, in case of a severe storm or tornado, obviously you're not going to leave your home. You're not going to go get in the car and look for the closest overpass. Bad idea. What you need to do now is to find a place in your home that's appropriate shelter. If you have a basement, somewhere in that basement, forget about the southwest corner. We quit preaching that years ago. Under a stairwell or a heavy workbench or something like that. Something where you'll have cover over you as well. In that area, you're going to put a small emergency kit consisting of thick blankets to cover up against debris, flashlight, and a battery-powered radio so you know when to come out.
Okay, so to actually have that stuff ready. So if your basement stairs is now a closet, maybe it's time to reconfigure that space.
Exactly.
And what you're saying is be prepared now so that you can easily take your family into a secure location.
That's correct. Now, if your home is on a slab, you want to go for the smallest room possible with as many walls between you and the outdoors.
That's why people end up in the bathroom.
And the bathtub. There's many a storm has been ridden out in the plains in a bathtub with the couch cushions over you, because those things are usually, if something substantial, steel or fiberglass, and it works.
What about advice for people who might be traveling? I mean, I remember one day I was driving through the cornfields and could see a funnel cloud off in the distance. What do you do in that situation?
Now, the instructions in an urban area are much different. You don't try to outrun a storm in an urban area. Out here, you've got a fighting chance. What you want to try to do is move to the south out of the path. Now, if it's just getting bigger, you've just made some bad decisions, and you need to pull over and find a ditch or a depression and get in it. Make sure it's not something that's going to fill up with water. Again, overpasses are not the thing to do because they actually concentrate wind.
Let me ask you something that I'm interested in, just because of some of the storms that we've had, some of the situations that we see even across country where you have to evacuate. If you have to evacuate, what do you take with you? And are you able to get that prepared in advance too?
Sure you can. Sure you can. Okay. Those folks out in California, in the area underneath that dam, they had to leave right now.
So how do you do that right now?
Again, preparation. You need to prepare for each person in your family 3 days. That's the magic number, 3 days, either if you're in a sheltered place or if you're going to go someplace. Worth of clothing, comfort items that you'd normally need, your medications, your important papers. You should have
your license. What other important papers?
Your home papers, things that you would not be able to replace in case your home was destroyed.
Oh.
You need to have copies of that on you so you can start over again. Cash is always good because you don't know if you're going to have power where you're headed or even an ATM. And of course, the pets. Don't forget to prepare for the pets. Have a supply of food, leashes. If you need a container, have that where you can get at it. Have this stuff all ready and go through it occasionally and make sure that things that are perishable in there get changed out.
So maybe that basement under the steps where you prepared your emergency shelter is the place that you should have a couple duffel bags ready to go, packed in advance, and then you're either hunkering down or heading out.
Yeah, the popular term for that is a bug out bag.
Okay.
So
most people don't do that though, do they?
No, nobody thinks of that stuff until the guy's beating on the door telling you you have to leave.
Interesting and very good advice, and we need to hear it again. And as you said, we need to do it right now today. We need to practice, we need to prepare, we need to have the space ready and the supplies ready.
And get the weather radio.
And get the weather radio.
Because outdoor warning sirens are not meant to be heard inside a building. You know, we put a lot of time and effort into it, and thankfully, due to the good graces of TransCanada, we actually got $20,000 of a grant to replace old sirens. But still, you're not going to hear them inside.
I'm glad you're here today because I think it's nice for people to realize that when we're just doing our day-to-day, the Emergency Management Agency is taking care of us. And so pay attention to them. And again, before we leave, I want to ask you, Tom, you're on Facebook and you're also on the web.
Right.
Okay. So on Facebook, it's Sandwich, Illinois Emergency Management Agency. And then your website is sandwich.illinois.us. And then SEMA
SEMA Web, all run together.
SEMA Web. All right. Well, thank you so much for
And thank
being
you
here.
for having me. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
it's good to have this reminder, and it's always nice to see you on our show.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Joe Dillett. He's going to talk about how to respond to your neighbor in a time of emergency. We'll be right back.
Their support changed my life.
They were like family.
My voice is now heard.
A home for every animal.
My future is bright because they cared.
This is our home now.
Thank you to the 1,200 nonprofits that serve Cass and Clay counties every day.
Joe Dillett joins us now. Joe is a disaster action team member for the American Red Cross. And Joe, it's always nice to talk to you about all your many adventures. Thank you for being on our show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity for me and the Red Cross, so thank you for inviting me.
Now, the Red Cross, that's the lead agency we see on the TV commercials and everything when something happens. Tell me, that organization, it's not a government organization.
No, it's not. It's a private organization, and we rely on donated dollars because we don't receive any tax money. Clara Barton started the American Red Cross in 1881, and so we're well over 100 years old. And so I belong to the Chicago region, which is all in northern Illinois, and I answer to the chapter in Rockford. And yes, nationally we have about 500,000 volunteers, and those are, and paid staff probably only about 35,000. So we're well over 90% run by just volunteers.
Okay, so when people donate to the American Red Cross, they can feel secure that that money is being used. Is there any statistics on what percentage goes actually to help?
Yes, we are audited, and those audit results, that's an independent auditor, and they are published. So when people give money, let's say to Haiti, you can go online and you can see how much money was given to Haiti and where that money was spent. So it was spent on housing, on health things like cholera prevention, clean water, all this recovery from the, and the nice thing about the Red Cross is it's international, and we've got people there. And so when the money goes there, it goes to our people and they distribute it. So we're very careful with the donated dollar.
Very careful with it, and then also very transparent with what happens with that money.
Exactly.
How did you get started?
Well, my daughter worked for the Red Cross down in Peoria in the blood department. She entered the blood data, and she asked my wife and I about 7 years ago, why don't we volunteer with the Red Cross? We said, yeah, why don't we? So we became volunteers then, so that's how I got started.
So and now you've been trained as a disaster action team member, and you've been doing that long enough that now you're starting to train others. You're a trainer of sorts.
Yes, yes. The thing is, when you join the Red Cross, there's many different areas you can go into. So one of the things that we do is we give an orientation when they come in. So they need to get the background check and all that so they can work with kids in shelters and all of that. And then with the orientation, there's many different areas. It isn't just a disaster action team, but they can go in the blood area, mental health, regular health. And so then if they go in the disaster action area, there's many areas that they can select there, whether they want to go in mass care, which is sheltering, or mass feeding, which is driving the truck and delivering food, or bulk distribution. If they want to go in the client casework, if they want to go warehousing, logistics, mental health.
But you go right to the scene.
Yes. Almost all of us do. When they have a shelter, it is away from the actual, it's a safe area. But when we are distributing food, we're going right into the scene where, the people are working on cleaning up their homes and all of that, and we're taking food right there to them. We bring the cleanup supplies right there to them, so they have their shovels, their rakes, and their dust masks, gloves, flashlights, all this.
Whatever they need.
Whatever they need is delivered to them.
You were telling me about a week or so ago that there's really a nice relationship between you and the first responders who are the police and fire, and what happens when you show up.
Yes, we are the expert in the sheltering. In other words, we are the shelter authority as far as the government is concerned. The nice thing about the Red Cross is when you become a volunteer, you're really working with people that want to help people. So first of all, the volunteers themselves are very nice people, and so you create a bond there. But the Red Cross has got extensive training. They won't send you into a situation without getting the proper training. And when you do go, you're with someone that's experienced in that area. And then we have the resources. So we have extensive resources, the trucks and all that, and how to respond. But the partner agencies like the first responders, we work very well with them. We often canteen with them when they have a long fire. We're out there feeding the firemen. And so this relationship extends when we go into a disaster, like when they had the Fairdale tornadoes. Most of the Red Cross work there was feeding the first responders because it's primarily a campground.
Oh, I see. So now what I'm hearing is that the first responders know that when you show up with that Red Cross on your shirt, they can feel secure. It's almost like a relax, okay, we've got help.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
The thing is they're so
I'm going
busy.
to cut you off there because I want to take a break. You and I could talk for hours, but when we come back, tell me a little bit about your response bag and how we get started volunteering.
Okay.
We'll do that right after this.
Their support changed my life.
They were like family.
My voice is now heard.
A home for every animal.
My future is bright because they cared.
This is our home now.
Thank you to the 1,200 nonprofits that serve Cass and Clay counties every day.
Joe Dillett, Disaster Action Team member for the American Red Cross, is talking to us today about responding, volunteering to help other people in the community. And I got to ask you about the bag. This is your personal bag.
Yes. One of the things we do, we respond to the fires, people that are displaced because of a home fire. So we go on scene, and this is my responder bag. And in here, well, the kids, they need their little stuffed animal, but I have emergency supplies in here for them, like a comfort kit that they'll have their toothpaste and soaps and razor, things they lose in the fire. And then I've got the paperwork in here that I can give them some monetary cash. But the main reason why we're going there is emotional support, especially if there's children, thus the bear. See? So, but the responding, when you go to a fire, there are many needs you have to look at because their life has just been thrown in chaos. So the first thing we're there for is their emotional support. And then we want to first of all find out if everybody's okay and if the pets are okay and all of this. Then we see if what their needs are. And first we look at like mental needs. Do we need to call in mental needs? And we look at their prescriptions. So what have they lost in the fire? Because that takes a while to get those prescriptions because we have to get Red Cross Health involved. And by the way, there's never any cost for any of our services. So then we start working on getting their medications replaced. But then I look at their other needs, if they're going to need shelter, if they're going to need food and clothing and bedding and all these things. So we try to get them through the first 72 hours. So what I do is we assess that. We've got a formula that we go by. If it's a family of 4, and we got to get them through the first 72 hours. But then what we do is we open a case on them. And now we have a caseworker that follows up with them. And that caseworker calls them several times. We can refer them to other agencies, other places that they can get help. Sometimes they need a little bit more money loaded on the card. And
so you don't just stop at the emergency and do that. You continue to offer support because that is devastating, and that all doesn't hit at once. The loss that you have from a fire is going to reverberate.
Well,
into
and
the
especially
future.
like kids, like when life starts getting back to normal, then all of a sudden they'll start having bad dreams in that. And if the parents know that, I know I can call the Red Cross and maybe over the phone we can solve this, have the mental health worker get on the phone either with the parents or with the child and talk them through it, you see. So yes, we do work with the family continuously.
This is so intriguing what it's so much more than I ever imagined.
Oh, we are doing disaster preparedness. We're doing smoke alarm installation. The Red Cross goal is to reduce deaths in fires by 25%. And we started that a couple years ago, so within 5 years, we're trying to reduce that deaths in fire. And it's through training, installing smoke alarms. We work with the fire department. Where's their concentration of fires in this area? That's where we go in there and we let the people know we're there, and we get invited into their home to install the smoke alarms.
Before we run out of time, tell me about the need for volunteers and how do we learn more about volunteering?
There's always a need because there's old people like me that we sometimes get phased out. But when I go on national disasters like this, last year I was in California for the Erskine fires and Louisiana for the flooding and Tennessee for the wildfires. You're seeing the same people that you respond to. And so we kind of become a family, and that's good in a way. But like I only responded to 3 national disasters last year. Some of these people respond to 6. And they just feel the need is out there. We don't have enough volunteers to cover all this. And it's a real privilege to get deployed like that because the Red Cross then has to recognize you. You've got the training to do that. So it takes a while to get to that level and to get the training in. So that's why we have this extensive training that we're doing, the fast track training next weekend in Chicago. And so they can find out things on our website, like when the training is and what areas that they want to work in. I mean, even if somebody is not really mobile, they can work out of their home as a dispatcher or something, you know. So there's so many areas you can volunteer with.
So you should never feel as though I'm not good enough to volunteer, I can't volunteer. There's a job for everybody helping the Red Cross.
Exactly, and you're working with fantastic people too that want to help other people.
This is wonderful news. You can find out more information about this at www.redcross.org. It can't get any easier than that. And I would really urge you to do that. You mentioned that you have trainings. They'll always have an ongoing or upcoming training and something that you want to know about. So,
exactly.
Joe, thank you so much for coming on our show today. Thank you for being with us too. I'm Barb Nadeau for Fox Valley Television. It's great to be here.